Welcome, everyone. Woo! It's cold out here. I am in sunny Switzerland. Not so sunny today. Anyway, we got a big day. We've got the election being certified, and I wanted to be here with you because this is just incredible. I mean, you talk about history being made. You talk about us really witnessing it in real time. No one's ever done this before, okay? No one's ever gone through what Donald Trump was put through and come back out on the other side. I mean, it's really kind of glorious if you think of Americans saying, you know what, F you, to the entire establishment. We're done with it. We like this guy. He's standing up for us. He's the only guy who seems to be standing up for us. And we're going to take this all the way to Pennsylvania Avenue, which is what they did. So it's kind of a humiliating moment, if you would, for the Democrats, a humiliating moment for Kamala Harris. After all, you know what's going to happen? She's presiding over this thing. She's the one who's certifying it. She's the one who has to authenticate it all ultimately. And so this is obviously a tough go for a lot of Democrats who had just hoped that we would never see this day. I don't know what they're going to do. And maybe they can move to Switzerland, okay? Although, you look at all of Europe and it's increasingly getting more conservative by the day. You look, for goodness sakes, at Canada. Trudeau's going to be out. We're going to talk about that here in this show, too. But we got a lot of ground to cover. Make sure you subscribe, share, like. Make sure you hit the bell so you know when I'm here. This is kind of a surprise. Given the time change, I'm making sure I come on a little bit earlier with you. So it's early morning there on the East Coast, late afternoon here overseas. But let's take a look at Hillary Clinton, because I'm not sure what she's going to do. I mean, she really said it was going to be the end of our country if he won. Here she is in late 2023 going on your favorite show. Mine too, right? I'm being facetious. The View.
What, in your view, would happen if he were to be reelected?
Oh, I can't even think that, because I think it would be the end of our country as we know it. And I don't say that lightly. I hated losing, and I especially hated losing to him because I had seen so many warning signals during the campaign. But I immediately said, look, we have to give him a chance. We've got to support, the president we have. And I meant it. And I tried really hard. And then literally from his inauguration on, it was nothing but, accusing people of things, making up facts, denying the size of the crowd at his own inauguration. And
I'm sorry. It really amazes me that they try that. They do that over and over again, talking about gaslighting people. Oh, it's your fault. You're the crazy one. Oh, the economy's doing fine. How dare you suggest otherwise? Oh, real wages are up. No, they're not. Oh, actually, they'd say wages are up. Real wages were not up because you had to adjust for inflation. I mean, there was all this stuff, one thing after another. Don't forget, there was Russia. I mean, one thing after another. And then it torpedoed. So once he was out of office and he dared to ask for a recount, because, you're not allowed to do that. That's racketeering, according to Fannie Willis down in Georgia, who, of course, saw herself and her entire team get disqualified because of her many indiscretions. But that's neither here nor there. We got to get to these cases, too, because, by the way, Mershon, I mean, oh my gosh, this guy out of New York trying to sentence him before he goes to the White House because they want to say, oh, he's a convicted felon in the White House. How petty can you get? Donald Trump's lawyers coming forward asking that be stayed effectively until after he's out of office. So we'll get to all that. But everything that they did was so highly charged, so political, and it was all about cancel culture and getting rid of the other side. And they tried to get rid of him. They literally tried to wipe him out. They were trying to bankrupt him. They were trying to put him in prison. Anybody associated with him was a victim of this malicious intent that they had and that they put into place. And now, here we are, 4 years later, you guys. I mean, it started like 8 years ago, let's be honest, but 4 years later, he's going right back to the White House. So history is being made, and it's pretty darn glorious to see the American people rise up like this and take control of their democracy, their republic. If I have to hear the left one more time go on and on about our fragile democracy and how the democracy was going to be ruined if Donald Trump won again, I'm like, what do you think was going down when you couldn't say certain stuff? When you would lose your Twitter account if you talked about the laptop from hell, which turned out to really be Hunter Biden's, but you couldn't say that because the deep state didn't want. I mean, what do you think was actually happening? Our democracy was under threat, but it was from you people, all of you. And yet, you have to listen to this bogus nonsense on Morning Joe. Here's John Meacham, the very liberal historian that is doing his darndest to put Joe Biden in the best light possible. Good luck on that, buddy. You know what? You got a hard job in front of you. Here he is.
This is not a partisan talking point. This is not a just a way to hammer away at Donald Trump. To remember what happened on January 6th is an act of remembrance in the purest form. And remembrance in the traditions, Joe, that you and I and so many other people came from, remembrance is not nostalgia. It's an act of agency. You remember things that you either want to emulate or you want to avoid. And we want to avoid ever again having American democracy on the knife's edge.
You know what? I mean, I can agree with that. Yes, I want to avoid ever having American democracy on the knife's edge that it was on, for goodness sakes, for the last 4 years, where if you were a Republican, if you were a conservative, if you wanted to heck fly the American flag outside your house, you were under threat. You were under attack. You couldn't say go USA without running the risk that maybe the FBI would be on you because, gosh darn it, those patriots, especially the ones that go to Mass, and don't even talk about the ones that actually go to the Mass in Latin, right? I mean, this was crazy. Absolutely crazy for 4 solid years, not to mention the 4 years prior. So finally, we're coming out of that. Yeah, hopefully our democracy will never be on that kind of edge. We've built up a pretty darn great republic, and we need to keep it that way. And I love seeing that the American people came out as they did in November. They voted in force. They once again defied the polls and all the posters and all the mainstream media that tried to sit there and say, oh, you know what? It's close. It's tied. It wasn't close. It wasn't tied. You know what? He won, and he won by a pretty good amount. When you look at that electoral college, thank you very much. So yeah, I'm in red today for a reason. It is a good day. It is a celebratory day. It is a day when we can really honor what we are as a country. So then the question becomes, are they going to honor it? What exactly is going to go down? There's effectively like a roll call, and all the states have to say who they're voting for with their electoral college, and then Kamala Harris, as I said, her final defeat here, has to sign off on this, which I guess for her is going to be rather humiliating. But one congresswoman went on to MSNBC over the weekend just to make sure everybody knew that they weren't going to pull a fast one, that they were just going to do exactly what's to be expected, and they're going to certify these results because we Democrats are so about certifying the results. I actually think it's a really passive-aggressive thing to say, and I'm going to tell you why, but let me play the sound for you first. Here we go.
Gee, former Congresswoman Edwards, should we be shocked that Democrats would accept the results of a free and fair election?
Well, Democrats have always accepted the results of a free and fair election. This election is not going to be any different. In fact, Kamala Harris will be, sort of there in place to do that. And so I fully expect that Democrats are going to vote to certify, as they mostly always have. I'd be shocked. Maybe there'd be one or two, but I'd be shocked if that would happen, and that is the way it's supposed to be. I don't even recall the certification dates when I was in Congress. I actually have no recollection, even though I know I was there.
Right, because it was a nothing thing until 4 years ago. One more thing before we go to our break.
Really? Okay, so it's no big deal, and of course they just always accept the results of the election. Yeah, right. I mean, look, I'm going to play for you just a little tiny snippet, 40 seconds of them not being so magnanimous, not really accepting the results of the election. But they did this over and over again. This is courtesy of the RNC. They made...
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put in office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see the president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do. We have a president who, if in fact it is proven, has been assisted by the Russians and may in fact not be a legitimate president.
The one thing that Trump is fearful of when it comes to his being president is that finally we will see how illegitimate his victory actually was.
I have an objection. I object to the 15 votes from the state of North Carolina. I object because people are horrified.
He's an illegitimate president.
Do you believe Trump is illegitimate president?
What I believe is that there's no question that the outcome of this election was affected by the Russian interference.
There absolutely is a cloud of illegitimacy.
So that legitimacy is in question, yes.
So that was a very tainted election.
Okay, right? So you get the idea. In other words, when they're sitting there on their high horse saying, oh, we would never object, we would never question the results of any election, I'm like, who do you think started it? Thank you very much. Who started it? Hillary Clinton started it way back when she got licensed to do so from the now deceased Jimmy Carter. They're going to be celebrating his funeral coming up in a couple of days. Jimmy Carter, who was the sort of original election denier and was out there saying, oh, yeah, no, you know what, that's not an illegitimate president because it wasn't a legitimate election. Give me a break. All right, so we'll see how today goes. They're not going to try and pull quite the fast ones that they've done before, I don't think. I don't think that they're going to be able to get away with it because you know what? Americans, they voted already. They are so over this nonsense. They're disgusted by it. And you know what else was fascinating to me, what's come out over the last couple of days, is that the left seems to be admitting that they kind of screwed up on the security 4 years ago. And it was their fault, which I've maintained from the beginning. I mean, after all, why didn't the National Guard get called in? Why was everybody so lackadaisical about it? I mean, hey, we'd seen what happened in protests in 2020, Black Lives Matter protests that got out of control. Wouldn't you think logically that you would make sure that you had the security on hand to be able to deal with anything should it arise? Unless, of course, they wanted this because they then wanted to be able to turn around and say, ha, 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 it was you, it was you, it was you. Anyway, very interesting sound coming out of the woman who's in charge of all the security now, the woman who once ran for president, Klobuchar, Amy Klobuchar. I want to play that for you, but first a quick word from one of our sponsors. Hey, I love gold. I'm worried about inflation. I know that there's no way, even if we do everything right, that I'm really convinced, at least in the next couple of years, that we're going to be able to get all of this debt under control. So it's one of the reasons why I still, as bullish as I am on the economy, as bullish as I am on Trump, as bullish as I am on Doge and Elon and Vivek, I still want to protect myself. And one of the best ways, in my estimation, that you can do that is through an investment in gold. So if you're interested in doing the same thing, you can get up to $15,000 with our sponsor here, American Heart for Gold, from them if you just use my name. This is where the name dropping comes in handy. Or give them a ring, 1-844-495-1115. You can text my name, Trish, to 65532. Just text Trish to 65532 to get more information on this. But again, up to $15,000 in free silver associated with new customers coming in. I think it's really, I always think it's a good time, shall we say, to buy gold because it's one of those things that I buy and hold. But a little plug for them right there, helping to make all this possible for us. Anyway, the left has finally admitted, ladies and gentlemen, the left seems to know now that it really screwed up, that the security was messed up, and it wants you to know that everything's going to be okay from now on because Amy Klobuchar is coming to the rescue.
Congress will again convene on January 6th to certify Trump's return to the White House. The proceedings will be led by Trump's 2024 opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, as Washington bolsters security ahead of the event, though a repeat of the violence of 4 years ago does not, thankfully, seem imminent. Tomorrow's certification, a remarkable turnaround for Trump, who was widely condemned by even some of his strongest supporters 4 years ago this week for his role in the attack. And Mr. Trump is now promising to pardon many of those convicted of crimes committed 4 years ago on January 6th as soon as he takes office. Joining us now to discuss, Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota. She is counting the ballots tomorrow. She helped write the Electoral Count Act designed to prevent another January 6th tragedy. Thanks so much for being here, and Happy New Year to you, Senator. So let's talk about security for tomorrow because that's top of mind given the terrorist attack in New Orleans. You were part of a congressional review of security lapses about January 6th, and since then, some changes have been made. Let's bring those up. There's a new Capitol Police Chief, new leadership for the House and Senate Sergeant-at-Arms. The Capitol Police Chief now has the ability to ask for help directly from the National Guard during emergency situations. There are now 2,202 Capitol Police officers. That's up from 1,842. There's a new dedicated Capitol Police Civil Disturbance Unit with 6 platoons, more than 225 officers. And 4 years ago, only 25% of officers had riot gear, and now everyone does. Is D.C. prepared for whatever might happen?
Yes. And I'll make clear that in any of these events, as you saw in New Orleans, horrible things can happen, and we know that. But how prepared are we? And what we found out last January 6th, and this could have been any event, but this one is etched in our minds forever with the police officers dying, so many people hurt. We literally had cops that couldn't get at their riot gear. It was locked on a bus. A 4-hour delay to call in the National Guard because of some rule that had been in place that created a phone tree. An architect of the Capitol, who's kind of the boss of a bunch of the employees, wasn't even there. So these were dramatic changes we made, 103 recommendations. And my job as chair of the Rules Committee was to make sure they got done. We have, as you know, a new police chief, increased morale, many hundreds of more officers, and we have a plan and a strategy in place.
Wow. I mean, good for you, lady. Why on earth none of this was done before? I'd really like to know. Why on earth it was Nancy Pelosi's daughter, Alexandra, who came in, the documentary filmmaker, to shoot all the video, which she then gave or sold, even worse, to CNN and HBO. And then that was what we got to watch in a loop over and over and over again. And do you know that Congress actually hired, the J6 committee hired a former ABC News producer, one James Goldston, who's a very good producer. I know him, but he's better on Good Morning America, right? Like, you know, you're producing entertainment news, as opposed to producing that, which they tried to turn into entertainment to try and convince everybody you can never, ever, ever, ever elect Donald Trump again because of what happened. And what did they do? They went out and they elected Donald Trump again. And this is despite all the legal insanity. I mean, one thing after another. We know it. We know it all very well. Breaking today, we have just learned that the Trump legal team is going back and demanding that they re-examine effectively this plan to sentence Donald Trump, to sentence him before going to the White House. So that would have been a criminal sentencing there in New York. A Manhattan judge has indicated he would spare Donald Trump from jail time, but they were still going to somehow try to sentence him in this criminal proceeding because they have alleged that, well, you know, he was moving some money around to pay off one Stormy Daniels. It's a very complicated case. Alvin Bragg originally didn't bring the case because he didn't think he really had a case to bring. I would have agreed with that initial assessment. And then it further complicating things was the fact that the judge wasn't entirely even sure what the charge was. Remember when he said to the jury, Judge Mershon was like, well, pick A, B, or C. It was like a multiple choice question. Just find him guilty of something, right? They wanted to find him guilty of something, and they want to make sure that they're going to have a convicted felon going into office so that they can then run the headlines, convicted felon, now president of the United States. So that's kind of what this is about. It's very, very petty. But in a court filing just unsealed today, the lawyers for Donald Trump have indicated that they have plans now to challenge Justice Mershon's decision to uphold this conviction. So they're preserving a jury's verdict from May. This is according to the New York Times. The judge rejected Mr. Trump's argument that a recent Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity had nullified his conviction for falsifying business records to cover up this Stormy Daniels scandal. So now the lawyers are saying, well, actually, they're going to appeal Justice Mershon's rulings, and they're going to file an action against him and a so-called Article 78 petition. This is fascinating, guys. A special proceeding used to challenge decisions by New York State agencies and judges. So in essence, according to the Times here, and you know, the Times is not exactly a fan of Trump, the president-elect would bring a civil case against the judge to unwind his recent decisions to uphold the conviction and schedule the sentencing. Now, the appellate court could act pretty fast on this. I mean, of course, we're still waiting on the appellate court and Leticia James, more on that in a second. And if so, we could actually see whether or not they would grant or deny an interim stay of the sentencing quite soon. I mean, that could actually happen this week. So we're probably going to be getting some more news on this. But think of the pettiness of it, just if you would, for a moment. I mean, this is a case that many felt shouldn't have been brought. It wasn't clear what the actual charge or what the conviction really was in terms of being guilty, because they were like, oh, go with one of them, any of them. But they settled on somehow this falsification of financial records. And it really was just about getting Donald Trump however they could, whichever way they could. And so now they want to be able to say, well, a convicted felon is going into the Oval Office. And so they believe, these are the radical lefties, that somehow that will damage the MAGA movement, the conservative movement forever. And I'm just going to tell you, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And certainly we've seen that in the case of Republicans, in the case of Donald Trump, in the case of the MAGA movement. So they can try this again, but frankly, somebody would be doing them a favor by saying, forget about this one. It's out, it's done, it's appealed, it's over, he's not being sentenced. Because the more they play up this charade, the worse they look. They look like a bunch of fools, a bunch of morons. I mean, you can't even keep the darn cases straight. This is what I do day in and day out. And I'm like, wait a second. Okay, which one is this? We had the one down at Mar-a-Lago with the documents case. I mean, it's totally fine for Biden to take documents, and he's been taking them for 50 years. Can't do that if you're Donald Trump. Anyway, that one was thrown out. Why? Because it turns out they didn't ever have the authorization to hire one Jack Smith to begin with to even initiate the case. So there was that. There were the other two federal cases that Jack Smith had brought against him related to J6. Those are done. Those are finished. Those are out. He packed up his boxes and he left. And then you had Fani Willis, who, she has her own issues, but she had a crazy case with racketeering, trying to go after Donald Trump on that, because God forbid you actually ask anybody to recount the votes. That's apparently not allowed in the country anymore, not if you're one Donald Trump. On top of that, and this is the one that gets me the most, Leticia James. Leticia James trying to say that she knew how much Mar-a-Lago was worth, and she's putting the estimate somewhere around $18 million, despite the fact that it makes like more than $50 million a year. So Leticia is about to be in for, dare I say, a rude awakening. One Leticia James, who probably has the craziest case of all. I mean, Mershon's pretty bad. The Mar-a-Lago documents case was pretty bad. Fanny's was just weird because, of her own private issues. But in the case of Leticia James, this one actually, to me, and maybe it's just my background as a business journalist, I'm just blown away by. Because the idea that somehow the state can come in between you and your bank and make a decision about what your assets are worth. Listen, they're not worth anything. It's completely subjective until they're sold. All right, let's be very clear on that. You think your house is worth $250,000. And yet the bank maybe thinks it's worth $150,000. Therefore, you can't get a home equity line of credit for $250 because they're saying, no, our appraiser is going to say it's worth $150. In this case, their appraiser, effectively, and I'm oversimplifying this, of course, but Deutsche Bank was like, yeah, we think Mar-a-Lago's worth that much. And you know what? Okay, so maybe you inflated the square footage. It is actually up to Deutsche Bank to go and do the diligence check. They said, fine. Like, we're fine with this. We're fine with the valuations. We're fine with him as a credit risk. We're going to lend him the money. And we're very happy after the fact because we all got paid back. And here's the kicker. The bankers said they would do the deal again. So I'm sorry, Leticia, you have no victim. You have no case. And yet this woman is revving up for something, all as, mind you, the Court of Appeals in the state of New York prepares to throw this thing out. It's about to be done, but she's coming back for more somehow, some way, because it's her only path to political survival.
And lastly, I congratulate the President-elect Donald Trump. And if possible, we will work with his administration. But we will not compromise our values or our integrity or our principles. We did not expect this result, but we are prepared to respond to this result. And my office has been preparing for several months because we've been here before. We faced this challenge before. and we use the rule of law to fight back. And we are prepared to fight back once again. Because as the Attorney General of this great state, it is my job to protect and defend the rights of New Yorkers and the rule of law. And I will not shrink from that responsibility.
All right, I'm going to quote Mike Davis, one of the Trump lawyers right here, because he told our friend Benny, and I'm not going to play the sound for you, but I'll just quote it, okay? He said, yeah, sweetheart, you know, you keep going down that direction, and let me just tell you, we're going to put your fat ASS, and he said the word, in prison so fast. I mean, did she not realize who actually won? I don't think she has. And she hasn't gotten the reality check just yet. I'm waiting on it. I'm like, this is unbelievable, actually, that it's taking this long. It shows you the angst that they have. They're so worried about offending some on the left. But they're going to move because actually this is the woman that is threatening, if you ask me, our entire system. When you have litigious people like Leticia James trying to actually intervene in between private business transactions, I mean, not to mention all the nonsense stuff that you would expect maybe from a Fannie Willis or an Alvin Bragg, but this one is actually threatening capitalism itself, right? The entire U.S. economy. I have to take my gloves off to play this next soundbite for you, but this is Leticia, right? She's promising, this is right before he got elected, more trouble from him. What are you trying to do, lady? Did you not just see what happened in November?
Under my leadership, my office sued Donald Trump over 100 times. And the basis of all of that was Project 2025. So he cannot distance himself from something that he has attempted to implement when he was president of these United States. And we were successful 70% of the time. We were the firewall, Democratic attorney generals.
Oh, wow. You were successful? Well, guess what America said to you, Leticia, and to all your colleagues? They said, F you. Okay? Because here we are, 4 years after the allegations that came out of J6. And guess what? Kamala Harris is certifying the results of the election. And Donald Trump's going straight back to the Oval Office. And guess what? They took the House and the Senate, too. They got the whole kit and caboodle. Okay? So that is none other than a giant FU. And I expect that we're actually going to see some more of them, because, you know, it turns out that I don't even think people in your state, in the state of New York, like this very much.
The President of the United States has complained that I'm engaging in some sort of political witch hunt, that I've got some personal vendetta against him, that I campaigned against him. That is not true.
This illegitimate president who sits in the White House. That president, because he's not my president, he's an illegitimate president. His days are numbered. His days are numbered.
We've got to get ready to mobilize, and we've got to get ready to agitate and irritate until victory is won, but more importantly, until Trump is defeated.
Okay, so don't sit there and tell me that you didn't campaign on this. You absolutely did campaign on this. You're trying to campaign on this all over again. You're trying to actually bankrupt him. You want to go and take his assets. What is this absolutely insane number? It's nearly $500 million. Okay, I'm going to round up to $500 million that she has as a judgment against the future president of the United States, because she thinks that he massaged the numbers in a way that gave him an unfair advantage, even though his bank was like, yeah, whatever. I mean, it is so bizarre, you guys. It is so bizarre. And I've played, go back and watch it. We did like a whole special. I watched the entire presentation from her team in the appeals court, and it's just unbelievable, because the judges are like, lady, you're like off your rocker. You are just, you are so far out in left field, you don't even have a freaking victim, okay? So, but she wants to go in and take his assets and bankrupt him now as president of the United States. What is her goal? She's just going to run for president on this? I'm sorry, these days are over, okay? America has moved on, Leticia.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Leticia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Okay, see, that's her ultimate goal. She wants to seize his assets, and she's not going to give up on that goal, as she has told us over and over and over again. So, lady, it's kind of game over, and I'll go back to what Mike Davis said, because you might, sweetheart, find your fat ass in the slammer. I believe he said prison, and he didn't spell the rest of it. All right, markets are off to the races here. We're looking at what I expect is going to be a very good year, but I'm a big believer in investing for the long haul, putting a little bit in each week, each month, whatever you can, because guess what? Inflation, part of the way you fight inflation is not just the gold stuff, which I do recommend, but also by being invested in the companies that are going to grow. So I'd love to help you do that. I created a financial research company with a dear friend of mine who has spent 20 years on Wall Street picking stocks, and he's just phenomenal, has a stellar track record, Rob Horton. We created 76 Research. Get it? 76. It's a play on 1776 and freedom in America. Anyway, great companies in there. And we have a regular newsletter that you can get for just $1 a month. Use code word dollar, DOLLAR. You get it for just $1 a month for the first couple of months. You can cancel anytime. So no harm, no foul. But we also have model portfolios there for you. So if you're interested in growth, you want to look at the American Resilience portfolio. If you're interested in making sure you get an income at some point later on in life, look at the basic income builder portfolio. It's dividends, etc., stocks. And then if you're really concerned about inflation, which of course you should be, then go for the inflation protection portfolio. So it's all there. You can get them all if you join the Founders Club. It's actually the best value. Go check them out at 76research.com with code word dollar today. I mean, we have kind of a mess of a situation as a country right now. Judge Merchan, as you know, trying to sentence the soon-to-be president of the United States somehow just so he can get this convicted felon thing out there. You've got Leticia James trying to do whatever she can. Fannie is bye-bye. That's not coming back. I can pretty much promise you that one. But it's really disturbing to me that they're trying to move forward with this convicted felon thing so much. And now to the point where, good. He's got good lawyers. Donald Trump's attorneys are filing suit trying to appeal this thing. So we'll see how this shakes out. But it's really messed up that we're in this situation to begin with. I got to tell you, it really is. Balance of Nature. I want to give them a shout out too. It's New Year, new you. Isn't that like some, I can't remember what company did that, but anyway, New Year, new you. I take my vitamins every day. I take them from Balance of Nature. I'm a big believer in taking care of oneself. We talk about taking care of yourself financially, take care of yourself in terms of your health. Get your exercise, take your vitamins, drink your water. For my vitamins, I use those from Balance of Nature. I take the fruits and veggies every day. They're little gummies. They're gluten-free. If you have a gluten allergy, worth knowing. At balanceofnature.com, you can get 35% off. Just use my name, code word Trish, and you get free shipping as well. So balanceofnature.com. It's really terrific stuff. So good for you. And it's not just fruits and veggies. I mean, they have all kinds of things there on the website. I'm just telling you what I take every day. And, you can see I'm not getting a whole lot of vitamin D. Even here. Why didn't I go to the beach? I have a really funny swimsuit story to tell you. I'm debating whether or not I should. Okay, all right, really quick. So I'm in Switzerland, and I forgot my swimsuit, and they have all these indoor pools, and the kids want to go swimming and everything. So we're walking around town, and basically you can get lots of ski gear here, but the whole swimsuit thing is a little bit more complicated. So finally I find a store, and they had these swimsuits, and I'm looking, I'm like, they're really, really, really small. Like, I'm pretty small. Like, I normally would take this 4. It's like a size small in a swimsuit, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is really small, but we're in kind of a rush, and it's getting dark, so I just grab it, I buy it. They're like, it's not returnable. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a swimsuit. And I get it back. Somehow I had bought a thong. I'm like, no. Anyway, fortunately, they had more swimsuits for sale at the hotel. Reminder to Trish next time, make sure to bring your own swimsuit. I mean, it's cute and everything, but that's just not my style, no matter how much Balance of Nature I take. Anyway, Okay, I'm getting goofy now. CNN, the panel erupted today totally on CNN because there was an attorney that came on the show and just dared to point out the most obvious thing, which is that Donald Trump, and frankly the country, Donald Trump and his family have been through hell for the last 4 years. And somehow they took issue with this. I want to play it for you. Here we go.
Attorney General to send them to jail?
Not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that.
You can laugh at that, and you can say he's an idiot. That's the president-elect making another direct threat. This is unprecedented. It's wrong. We should all agree it's wrong that he says something like that. But yes, Joe Biden should try to pardon as many people as possible to protect from a guy who said, I want to be an authoritarian.
I know, but Congressman, the Democratic administration just went after Trump and his whole family. Wait.
Hang on. What do you mean, the Democratic administration? What are you talking about?
I wish the Democratic administration had gone after Trump.
Last I looked, Joe Biden is a Democrat. Last I looked, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, is a Democrat.
Okay.
They hired a special prosecutor who went after him in several jurisdictions. The Democratic Manhattan DA went after him. The Democratic Attorney General of the state of New York went after him.
None of these things. These things mean what you said at the beginning.
Didn't I say the Democratic administration
went after Donald Trump and his entire family?
They did. The Democrat went after Donald Trump and his entire family.
That was not President Joe Biden saying, I'm going to put Donald Trump in jail.
It's his administration. It's his administration and it's his entire family. Ivanka had to testify. Donald Jr. had to testify. Eric had to testify.
Trump was facing legal jeopardy in Georgia, in New York, and in federal cases, right? But one of the federal cases, one of the federal cases, he could have resolved like this. He could have just said, hey, come on in, go get the documents you're looking for, the end. It would have been done.
End of story.
So I don't understand.
That case wound up being dismissed on legal grounds, on technical legal grounds.
No, but I don't.
It was. What do you mean? No, it was dismissed. The federal judge dismissed.
The federal judge dismissed parts of the case, Arthur. You know that.
The whole federal case is gone.
It's
in
gone.
Florida.
It's gone now.
Yeah, Arthur's right. Okay, it's gone. I mean, I know it's hard to keep up with all of these. There's so many of them, right? But this one's gone. Trump's Florida case stunningly dismissed after a judge finds appointment of special counsel Jack Smith violated the Constitution. Here's the headline, the New York Post. July something? July 15th, 2024. Funny how I just remember these things, huh? Okay, so, those CNN anchors have a tough time. They have somehow convinced themselves in their heads that Trump is so bad and that all of these cases really somehow are going to continue on, even when they've been thrown out. So that was kind of just wild. It's just like they have amnesia or just a bad case, right? Of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome on steroids. And I go back to all the lies that were told, whether it was Russia, whether it was the laptop from hell that couldn't possibly have belonged to Hunter Biden. No. That's just Russian misinformation, disinformation being fed to you courtesy of Rudy Giuliani and all those MAGA people. Oh, except that the FBI actually was investigating that very laptop. I mean, come on. Right, so one thing after another. The Wuhan lab couldn't possibly have been working on gain-of-function research and had a mistake and created coronavirus. Nope. CIA still split on that one, despite every other three-letter agency coming out and admitting it. So it's just all these lies. And one of the worst lies of all, of course, was Joe Biden is phenomenal. He's at the top of his game. You had Morning Joe coming out and saying, this is the best Biden ever. And so Schumer was asked about this. Senator Schumer was asked on the NBC show, that's the one that's staying with Comcast. Remember, MSNBC is being spin off into Spinco because they don't want to be anywhere near these crazy people there on MSNBC with their crazy theories and conspiratorial ideas. Anyway, he goes on the NBC flagship political Sunday show and he lies to the woman's face, to the NBC show host's face. And she doesn't call him out on it, which is just typical but annoying. Watch. We almost had it. Here we go.
Obviously, there has been a lot of focus on President Biden's role
in this. You were obviously in close contact with President Biden well before the public tuned into that debate that ultimately led to him stepping down. I want to play you a little bit of something you said last year. Take a look.
I talk to President Biden, regularly, sometimes several times in a week, or usually several times in a week. His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to Americans who feel as though you and other top Democrats misled them about President Biden's mental acuity?
No. Look, we didn't, and let's look at President Biden. He's had an amazing record. The legislation we passed, one of the most significant groups of legislation since since Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, putting in 235 judges, a record, and he's a patriot. He's a great guy. And when he stepped down, he did it on his own because he thought it was better not only for the Democratic Party, for America. We should all salute him. We should all salute him.
You keep telling yourself that, Chucky, okay? You keep going with that because it may help you sleep better at night. But the rest of America knows better, and that's why the rest of America voted one Joe Biden. Well, they were going to vote Joe Biden, but effectively, by voting Kamala out, they're voting Joe Biden out. In other words, the Biden-Kamala, Obama team, Chuck Schumer team, Nancy Pelosi team, they are gone. They are done. And MAGA has come in with Donald Trump and a lot of successors that could take the spot 4 years from now. So you're looking at the beginning of something massive, something major. And this is what they were trying to prevent the whole time by trying to tell people, oh no, Joe Biden is fine. He's totally with it. Even though he wasn't. Even though I, like others right here on this show, told you he's clearly struggling. You have another correspondent, this MSNBC correspondent or host, or I don't know what she is. She's some commentator over there. She's clearly gunning for Joy Reid's job. Joy, I'd watch out. I know they're trying to slash your salary. You're getting paid $3 million too many. And this Simone Sanders is waiting in the wings. She's there, having watched the exchange with Schumer, where Schumer was played the clips of him effectively saying best Biden ever. That was Joe Scarborough's line. But effectively, this is, he was fantastic. He's so coherent. He's with it. That's all been proven to not be true. It's like the biggest scandal in modern history that people were trying to cover up how ailing he really was. But Chuck Schumer was doubling down on lies. And then this one, who's, like I said, Joy Reid, watch out, trying to angle for her job, is there agreeing with somehow this was the best Biden ever and didn't think that Chuck Schumer did enough to defend Biden against Kristen's questions. I mean, sorry guys, it's on tape. It's on tape. We know how much Biden was suffering.
Directly, there's obviously a lot of soul searching going on right now in the Democratic Party. What did you make of what we heard from Leader Schumer?
Well, I was very surprised that when you asked the question about mental acuity, he didn't more forcefully push back. The question on the table is the president all the way there? And the answer is unequivocally yes. Now, people can say that you feel as though President Biden might be a little too old to do the job, but he is doing the job, and his mental acuity is there. So I think that there's a conflation of two things here, is his mental capacity and serving another 4 years as old as he is. But those are two separate things in my opinion. And look, these people that have known Joe Biden their entire political lives, I know Joe Biden is like, can y'all just please defend me a little more?
Well, it's not worth defending him, though, because at every turn the last year and a half, he has taken the path of the most indulgent turn for himself rather than the good of the party by running again, by pardoning his son, and now, frankly, by some of these choices for a Medal of Freedom and going to Rome for one last trip. He's not exiting in a way that I think reflects well on his party, and Democrats are deeply, deeply unhappy about it, and they should be, frankly.
I would just say this one thing about the president.
It hurt Democrats in November to try to tell the American people something they could see with their own eyes wasn't true.
But it's not true that the president doesn't have the mental acuity.
Of course it is, Simone. American people saw that for themselves in the debate.
What are you saying? He can at least put a sentence together. The president-elect is the one I am concerned about, yes, because I recently spoke to the president.
I'm sorry. They're living in some kind of delusional la-la land. And it's time everyone woke up, smelled the coffee, recognized what just went down. I mean, this was frankly, in my estimation, just despicable. That you couldn't question in any way, shape, or form the health of the president when it was very clear to everyone he was struggling. I'll tell you what, you know what? One Jake Tapper, CNN's Jake Tapper, owes Lara Trump an apology for this, because Lara effectively said, you know what? His cognitive ability is declining. I think that's very obvious. She was basically, telling everyone the obvious. I mean, we could all see it. Everybody knew it, but you weren't allowed to say this. And he went nuts on her. He owes her an apology, seriously, for this one. Take a look.
Every time he comes on stage or they turn to him, I'm like, Joe, can you get it out? Let's get the words out, Joe. You kind of feel bad for him.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
You have
to watch somebody on stage search for
That's so amazing. It's so amazing to me
and try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter.
Yeah,
I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar. Plenty of people have diagnosed your father from afar, and I'm sure it offends you. Your father-in-law from afar. I'm sure it offends you. You don't have any standing to say.
I'm not diagnosing him. What I'm saying, Jake,
you just talked
is
about
that
a cognitive decline.
That Joe Biden
I have one last
struggling
question for you, Laura. You can't
times on stage, and it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay.
That is all I'm saying. I genuinely feel sorry for Joe Biden.
I appreciate it. I'm sure.
You notice he's also calling her Laura instead of Lara. I mean, you can't do that with Kamala, right? If you say Kamala or whatever, you're in all kinds of trouble. But it's perfectly fine to call Lara by the wrong name if you're Jake Tapper. He owes her an apology. He really does, because just a few months later, he was out scolding the American public for not believing just how bad a shape one Joe Biden was in. Remember?
There is a pattern, discernible pattern, of Democratic officials seemingly trying to convince you, the public, to not believe what you saw and what you heard with your eyes and with your ears on Thursday night.
What I've been able to do with with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare, the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Democratic officials have tried to spin this in many ways. They said President Biden just had a cold. They said it was just one off night, akin to when President Obama in 2012 was rusty and seemed a little huffy. But behind the scenes, make no mistake, most Democratic officials witnessed the same shocking spectacle that you did. The difficulty that the presumptive Democratic nominee, the current president of the United States, had just articulating his basic thoughts during the 90 minutes of the debate. The spinning is all very reminiscent of the George Orwell quote from the book 1984 that I invoked 5 years ago for a different situation and a different president. It's relevant again today. Quote, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." We're not going to do that today on The Lead. We're going to talk honestly and frankly about all of this with a number of individuals who see it for what it is. We're going to talk to some journalists and some Democrats.
Okay, so now finally, Lara Trump can't say it, but once Jake sees it with his own eyes, once Obama and David Axelrod and David Plouffe and the rest of the establishment says, you know what, we can't really run Joe because he's just not there anymore, then he's okay to say it. But God forbid anyone else, from me to Lara to Donald Trump, to anyone else, any streamer out there, you were just a cheap fake if you talked about his cognitive decline. I mean, look, I said it at the time, and I want to be thoughtful, and I'm a nice person, and I realize it's a huge accusation, right, to make. But sadly, I've seen this before in loved ones, and it was very evident what was going on. Anybody who's been dealing with that or has dealt with that in the past with a loved one recognized the signs. And it was all there for everybody else to see, but you guys were just clinging to he was somehow gonna make it. And you thought if you could just keep on telling yourselves, if you could just tell yourself we're going to get through this election, we'll hide him in the basement just like we did before, we'll pretend like everything's great, and he's a nice guy, and Donald Trump's bad. The orange man is bad. You can't vote for Trump because it's going to be the end of the country and the end of democracy. Hillary Clinton told you that. Whoopi Goldberg told you that. The rest of the ladies on The View told you that. Morning Joe told you that. CNN told you that. So if you don't believe that, well, then clearly you got rocks in your head. But what's great is America didn't believe it. You know why? Because Americans actually, they go to the grocery store every week. They see the increases in their car insurance. They see the increases in their health insurance costs. They know how tough it is. They know what's going on. And they had fond memories. They were like, okay, maybe there's some mean tweets along the way, but guess what? Life was pretty good otherwise. Pre-March 2020, pre the shutdown of the economy, which was really something that I'll go back in time. I think the Democrats took an unfair advantage of. I called them out at the time for it. It was wrong what they were doing. They were over-politicizing that in a way so that they could make everybody stay home. They scared everybody to death. Listen, I get it, and I lost loved ones in that tough time as well, so I want to be cautious how I say this, but I will say that the reaction was too much, it was too political, and it wasn't smart. In other words, you need a strong economy to fight something like that. You got these idiots out there saying, oh, his legacy, Biden's legacy is going to be, like Chuck Schumer, this amazing, quote unquote, New Deal that he put through, the trillions of dollars in spending that we absolutely could not afford. Guys, we get some breaking news I want to get to right now. It has just come out that, in fact, Justin Trudeau is resigning right now out of Canada. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he will resign after a decade of power. So it is official. The Prime Minister of Canada, who has presided over a very challenged economy, I mean, we've had inflation, but Canada has frankly had it worse, and his liberal policies have just not worked. Don't forget how liberal he is, how distraught he was that America actually elected one Donald Trump. Let's go to some sound of him criticizing America for not electing the first female president and instead electing Donald Trump. This guy's out. It's official, breaking just now.
We were supposed to be on a steady, if difficult sometimes, march towards progress. And yet, just a few weeks ago, the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am, and always will be, a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and in my government.
Of course, you just don't have him as prime minister anymore. So he has certainly become one of the most unpopular figures in Canada in decades, probably worldwide. He's leaving his party clearly very, very weak. His country's facing an uncertain economic future. Donald Trump has offered to take him in. We'll make him a state, he said. He's also, Donald Trump, promising to see tariffs on Canada as high as 25% on those Canadian imports, in part because Canada has not done its part to secure the border, and as a result, fentanyl, etc., has flowed through, and this has been obviously a very, very big campaign point and sort of tenet of the MAGA movement, certainly from Donald Trump, who has made it very clear to both Mexico and Canada, like, listen, you guys either shape up and you take care of your borders or else. And so Trudeau now is, I think, probably one of the most epic examples, besides Biden, besides Kamala, of a progressive lefty who's just going down in flames because those policies have not worked. I think Canadians have not felt as safe. Canadians have not felt as secure economically under Trudeau's leadership. And so while he can sit there and project this message of kumbaya and, all the great lefty stuff that they get excited about, joy, etc., bottom line is voters felt like this guy just wasn't doing enough for them and for their basics. And so you've seen that the Liberal Party's poll numbers have absolutely plummeted in Canada, and voters are blaming Trudeau for sure for all of these rising costs. In fact, I think there's like a 20% spread difference right now between Conservatives and the Liberal Party there in Canada. And this is a movement that you're seeing happening all over the world. I'm here coming to you live from Switzerland, and I hear it sort of anecdotally here among especially some of the more Italian areas. So there's an Italian part of Switzerland that I was in recently. I was also in Italy recently and heard from so many people how they were hopeful that Donald Trump was actually going to help reset the course of the world, and that they felt more positive than they've ever felt, in part because Trump is now in office. And I thought of the irony of that, because here are the Europeans, right? And the Europeans are the Europeans, and you're thinking, well, they have their own kind of baggage and their own liberalness that has not served them well. And it's like they're coming to that realization. So you can make the same joke about Canadians, right? The Canadians, with their liberalness, they're also recognizing that these policies have not worked. The wokeism is a problem. You look at Europe, which opened its arms in part because Merkel was out there in Germany saying we need to take all these Syrians in. They did it in the UK. They did this throughout Europe, and it has become a huge problem because they can't support it. So economically it's challenging, politically, security-wise it's challenging, and they're coming to this realization. So Justin Trudeau officially out, breaking right now. He is gone. He is no longer the Prime Minister now of Canada. He is stepping down, and it shows you know what? Go woke, go broke, as they say. Chrystia Freeland had just stepped down, actually, quite recently, because she actually disagreed with some of Trudeau's spending propositions. She's kind of like, the treasury person in Canada. But I think it's a moment for us to all reflect on what they've done, right? The George Soros is the word. By the way, you just got the big Medal of Freeman. What they've done and how wrong they have been and how it just hasn't worked, because bottom line, people need sort of basics from society and from government. If you guys aren't going to provide it, then it's game over. And you didn't provide it. And this is part of the big reason why Donald Trump is now coming back to office. Again, this is a historic day. January 6th, 4 years after the fact, 4 years after protesters protested there on Capitol Hill. Donald Trump saying he's going to forgive them all, he's going to pardon them all. 4 years after the Democrats tried to ride that one all the way, I was going to say to the bank, but all the way to another 8 years. They tried to run Donald Trump effectively into jail or out of the country or into bankruptcy, however you want to phrase it. But they wanted to get rid of the MAGA movement for good. And instead, what has happened? Donald Trump has come back stronger than ever. If you think about it, he really is. Because if he had come back, or if he had just been elected, say, in 2020, and if the economy had had the challenges it had, I don't think they would have been as bad, but, there were certain things in place that were cyclical, that were problematic. There was a lot of money that had been spent. Again, I don't think Donald Trump would have been so keen on doing more of that and all the regulation, et cetera, so we would have been in a better place, but I don't think people would have appreciated it. And now they really appreciate him. So he's coming in with the wind at his back, as we like to say, our Irish household, the wind at his back. And he's got so much in terms of possibility ahead. And it's not just in America. You look at what just happened now in Canada. Trudeau's out because conservatism is taking over the world. Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister of Italy, being seen as somebody who can help lead Europe because she's conservative. She was just down at Mar-a-Lago. And she's meeting with Elon and she's meeting with Trump, and she's thinking about how they can reposition Europe as a conservative ally with America. So this is a big deal. It's a very, very big deal. I should point out my dear friend Rob and partner at 76 Research was on it right now and got me that breaking news of Trudeau stepping down. We'll see how this is shaking out for the markets. I think the markets will certainly welcome it because this is frankly, this is some good news for the world. It's good news for the U.S. It's good news for Canada. And we do see that the market's actually trading up on the day here on this January 6th. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up above 43,000. A quick reminder, go check out 76 Research. You can get this newsletter for just $1 a month. Just use code word dollar. After the first 2 months, it goes up to $9.95. I think it's the best $9.95 you're ever going to spend because it's going to get you investing in the stock market, which you need to be. James Carville recognizes how dumb his party is. James Carville gets it. James Carville's a Democrat strategist. He's the one who coined the phrase, "It's the economy, stupid." In other words, he knows that Donald Trump stole all their thunder. I mean, they went to all this woke insanity and transgender nonsense, and let's have Dylan Mulvaney be the spokesperson for the most frat-like beer on the planet that was doing great, by the way, and didn't actually need to have a total remake. So this wokeism, this refusal to sort of hone in on the mom and pop dinner table issues, like how are we going to pay for our kids' new sneakers this month, like that actually was a real problem for the Democrat Party, and he's out sounding the alarm. He makes sense. I just don't know if anyone is going to listen.
Is don't talk in that jargonistic language. If you remember during the 92 campaign when I said the economy's stupid, I was talking to all of the geniuses in the campaign. And I was telling them, who were all more educated and smarter than I was, don't be too smart here, okay? Let's just be authentic and to the point. So I think people like you and I can bring this home by example. And don't use that idiotic NPR jargon when you're talking to voters.
We got to de-academic. I mean, we love academics, but we got to make it less academic, less ivory tower. I'm here with you. I'm just like editing.
One thing I'm good at is dumbing it down.
Good luck, guys, because that's your entire base of support. Academia, ivory towers. I mean, this is who loves you, right? That's the whole woke culture that is bringing Justin Trudeau down, that is bringing Europe down, that brought the Democrat Party down. But I don't know how you're going to quite get away from it. I really don't, because it's sort of all you've found yourself to be in line with. It's become so fashionable, right, to hate America, all this nutty stuff. Another reason why I like gold in light of it all, look, any uncertainty that's going to be there, this is something that's going to help you manage through it. And, look, gold has done really, really well. So whether or not it sees the same kind of upside is anyone's guess over the course of the next couple of months. But for me, I look at gold as something that I'll never sell. I never sell it. I buy it whenever it goes lower, and then I just never sell it, because it's something that, and you got to come to terms with how much is in your portfolio and what you think is right, but it's something that in terms of my own portfolio, my own diversity in the portfolio, I want to make sure I have exposure to. If you're interested in this, you can get a great offer right now with our show sponsor, American Heart for Gold. Just text Trish to 65532. Get out your phone, hit 65532, and text them my name, Trish, because you can get up to $15,000 in free silver right now with American Heart for Gold. Listen, today is a great day, all right? We've been through hell and back, have we not? Trump has certainly been through hell and back. His family's been through hell and back. Many of his associates have been through hell and back, and yet we've come out on the other side, and I'm in red for a reason, all right? Other than I like the color. It is such a good day, and there is so much hope for what is to come. The election is to be certified by none other than one Kamala Harris in a final moment of humiliation for Kamala. And interestingly, on the same day, Justin Trudeau, king of the wokeness, steps down as prime minister of Canada. I'm seeing a thread here. I'm seeing a narrative. It's all coming together. Good stuff ahead. I'm here with you live through all of it every single day, no matter where I am in the world. Thank you for subscribing, sharing. It is so sweet. Richard, thank you so much for the kind remarks. And yeah, I get it. You guys do not like any of the wokeness. Peace of mind. Thank you so much. That is very kind of you to say. Listen, good stuff ahead. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in. Hit the bell.